Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I'm Matt Green. I'm a grateful alcoholic. By the amazing grace of God and the program of action and service called Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm alive and sober today. And that's no big deal. To be alive, you don't die, and to be sober, you don't drink. The amazing deal of that is I'm happy to be alive, and I'm happy to be sober. I don't know about you, but I wasn't happy to be alive or sober for a lot of years of my life. You know, I'd like to thank Peter for asking me to come down here again. He must be a really sick alcoholic because he keeps asking me to come down there, you know. What the truth is whenever he gets in a bind and needs somebody, you know, he calls me up and has me come down. You know, I don't know, I guess I just got, you know, that deal when it's read, the traditions are to the group as the steps are to the individual. And, you know, I don't like that. Without the traditions in my life, I'd be screwed. I mean, they are important to the group, but they're just as important to the individual as the steps are. And anybody who doesn't believe that, you know, they're just not going to have, if they don't drink, I don't know, I better not get off into it. It's just, that's my opinion. I'll say the traditions, it's not applying my life. See, the traditions guarantee me a safe place to go. And I don't know about you, but I've never had a safe place ever to go ever in my life because I was there. So it was unsafe. And the traditions applied in my life gives me a quality of life much, much greater than just working the steps. You know, I'm grateful early on in sobriety that the old-timers got me involved in service. You see, this coming March 17th will be 23 years I've been going to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I only have 12 years of sobriety. And the only reason why I have 12 years of sobriety and not 23, almost 23, is because I did it Matt's way for 11 years. You know, when I went to my first meeting, I identified. You know, when they, you know, especially when they, you know, someone would share, you know, they beat the old lady and they didn't come home till Christmas and it was a January meeting and they wrecked their cars and they ran around with wild women and, you know, at infinitum, I went home and promptly told my fifth wife, don't you ever question why I do these things. I'm an alcoholic, man. And but you see, there wasn't no desire to change, and that's what it requires around here. A lot of people go around, you know, I work with a lot of alcoholics, and they say, man, I just can't get the deal here, and the deal is they don't change. You know, and it's like, I see people trying to work the steps and without no change in their life, and I don't know how you work the steps and get involved and don't have change, but you know, without this psychic change that the book talks about, we're doomed to live a miserable life. It talks about going back to the gates of insanity or death. It doesn't even say drinking. You know, most people do go back to drinking because the deal is if you stay not drinking and don't do the deal here, what are you left with? Self-will. And the book tells me that self-will is the root of all my problems. And I was selfish and self-centered before I ever took my first drink. I only know that and can tell you that today because of the inventory work in Alcoholics Anonymous. A lot of my stories hearsay. Well, not really hearsay. There's a lot of police reports. I'm not an alcoholic because I've done a lot of time. There's a lot of people that do time aren't alcoholics. That's just where a lot of people end up, but there's a lot of closet drinkers. When I got sober this time, it pissed me off. I was sitting there because, you know, if you said you were a housewife and drank cooking sherry and knitted, and mind would close, you know what I mean? That's, how could you be an alcoholic and be a knitter sherry drinker, you know? And I screwed up one day and I started listening for the feelings. And she was about 3 minutes into it, and I realized I was relating to this knitting, sherry drinking housewife. It kind of pissed me off, you know. And that just showed me to start listening to how people felt and not look at what they did or anything. Because there was another guy, the only time he ever drank ever in his life was on New Year's Eve. He was 14 years sober when I got sober this time. And I tell him, man, you're in the wrong place. You're here by accident. You're not an alcoholic. Only drink once a year. And that guy sat me down and explained that it doesn't matter how often or how much you drink. It's what happens to you, the effect that alcohol produces when you take the first drink. And I'm grateful for people like that that took the time to explain this stuff to me. You see, because all I had all the years till I got sober was Matt's way of doing it, and Matt's way of figuring it out, and Matt's way of thinking about it. And the book tells us that we have delusional thinking. If you don't know what delusional is, get a dictionary. It's not too good. It also tells us, in the doctor's opinion, we were in full flight from reality. And if you don't know what that means, it's not too good either. And in other words, the way we dealt with reality in life and the way we thought about things, we were all screwed up. And so then we get here and we become great thinkers, you know, and try to figure things out. And I sponsor some dummy attorneys, and they're really hard on about that, trying to figure it out. You know, they'll use their brain power. I call them idiot number one, idiot number two. But you know, when I first started drinking, what qualifies me to be here is I was selfish and self-centered. You see, my parents were getting a divorce. And not once till I did the inventories in Alcoholics Anonymous did I ever think that, you know, I had brothers, but you see, this whole thing was happening to me. Nobody else in the world, just me. I was being abandoned by my parents. I was being unloved. I wasn't wanted. You know, if there was a God, he was picking on me. Because as a child, real small, going to church, you know, I heard about this condemning God, and you know, so there must not be a God, and if there is, he's a cruel, vicious, mean God. You know, and see, this whole thing's just happening to me, nobody else in the world. And I don't know, many of you are normal, you'd cry or go tell somebody, but see, my mind clicks into delusional thinking. My mind clicked into, I don't want to feel this way, I want to feel happy and have fun. And my mind clicked into my parents having parties and everybody's drinking and laughing and having fun. That's the way my mind told me it was. After I did the inventories in Alcoholics Anonymous, then I could remember, you know what, there was a lot of arguing, there was divorces went on, there was fist fights. But see, my mind don't think of that. My mind thinks of the drinking, laughing, having fun. That's the way I want it. And of course, my mind tells me, see, because it didn't get loud and the dancing and the fun and the laughter till the alcohol had been going for a while. So you got to, my mind tells me you got to drink. So I guzzled this Bacardi rum on my mom's, and it went up and down about 20 times. And tasted like crap, and my mind don't click in, hey, this isn't very good. My mind clicks in, you know what, this being abandoned doesn't matter anymore. It wasn't no big 4th of July firework deal going off, and it didn't make me feel wonderful, and it just, what was going on inside was just okay. It didn't matter. All that madness didn't matter. And my mind tells me, yeah, it tastes terrible, you puke, but the deal is, it makes you okay. And I didn't realize that one day at a time, I was progressively going to use that excuse to where it didn't need an excuse anymore. You know, because I tried to blame for a lot of years, and yeah, I did the deals, you know, because I was a little wimpy little sissy kid, and the kids would pick on me at school, and God, I just cry my eyes out, and just, God, I'd want to have big muscles and be a tough guy and beat the crap out of these other kids. And I found out I could drink before school, and all these kids that picked on me, I whipped their butts. I found out I could whip 4 guys on the way to class, the first period class. So I became the tough guy, and I didn't know this was a progressive deal that I was going to chase till I got sober, to try to be one step ahead of everybody all the time. And because I learned real young at age that the crazier I was, and the meaner I was, and the uglier I was, the further away you stayed, and the further away you stayed, the less chance you had of knowing how I felt and how scared I was inside. And if you were away from me, then you couldn't hurt me. And then, of course, you had to do the stealing and, you know, beating people up, and you know, when I did those things, I felt like a piece of crap inside. So then I would have to drink to get rid of that feeling like crap, you know, so I could feel better than you. And then I'd do something else stupid, and I'd have to drink more to cover up the way I felt. And then I'd even do more stuff, and I started frequenting the juvenile hall systems. And I grew up in a little tiny town. Back then it was. And, you know, it started out the cops would handcuff you to, you know, being in grammar school, to the fire hydrants on Saturday and expect you to paint them. And of course, being a tough macho guy, you know, I'm not going to paint no fire hydrants. I'm not a fire hydrant painting kind of a guy, see. And, you know, and I can remember being a little kid and growing up in this little tiny town, and Saturdays, man, we'd go out there and watch them walk the convicts from the jail to Walker's Cafe, all handcuffed together to eat lunch. And man, you know, I'll never be like that. And when I turned 18 and shot a cop during a robbery, there I was being handcuffed with these other criminals, walking down the main street of Clovis to Walker's Cafe to get lunch. And I thought, man, how did I get here? This isn't what I planned. You know, and so I thought, you know, I'll slow this down. And you know, I don't know what kind of alcoholic you are, but when they arrest me, I was always doing inventories. You know, sitting in a jail cell, I would do a quick inventory and figure out what mistake I made. I was always doing that, and I'm sitting in that jail cell after I shot that cop, and I thought, man, I shouldn't have done that, you know. Because they were really pissed, and it wasn't really my fault. I was a victim. I love playing the victim role. But the deal with everybody around that wasn't going to jail, see, they were getting married and having kids and just that boring, dull life, right? So I thought that's what I would do to slow this process down a little bit. Like, I don't mind going to jail for assault and battery or you know, ripping out somebody's house, but I didn't really want to go to jail for murder right off the bat. And So I checked with all the girls I was engaged to, and this one said she was pregnant. You know, if one's good, lots better, you know. I mean, it don't have to be just alcohol. And you know, and this is a heck of a commitment for a guy like me, because, see, that's why I was engaged to a lot of different girls and had different girlfriends. You never had to get real close, you know. You didn't have to show no real seriousness, and it was a safe place so they wouldn't find out how vulnerable you really were. And so this is a heck of a commitment for a tough guy. You know, I'm riding with the Hells Angels already, and, you know, playing the role and being locked up a lot. And she either lied to me, or we need to go in the World Guinness Book of Record, because we got married and that kid didn't come along for 18 months later. And I don't think I need to tell you, I was a little bit pissed. And of course that marriage didn't work. And you know, it was California, you know, the cops here just pick on me. And so, you see, you guys call them geographics, right? I never did a geographic. I did looking after my own butt, is what you call it. Because like they had indictments for me in California, so I moved to Reno, Nevada. And see, the problem is I always took me wherever I went, and that created problems in my life. Because I never went anywhere looking for a different way to live. I just went somewhere trying to get the heat off, to quit getting locked up, and I was a victim wherever I went, because they do the same thing. They keep locking me up. But I got to Reno, God, and they got all those bright lights and 24-hour gambling and the free drinks. You know about the free drinks, right? You just cash your paycheck there and leave with nothing, you know. But the drinks are free, though. I thought, God, this has been my problem. I grew up in California. I needed to be where the action's happening, and bright lights and all that stuff. And within a week, I'm sitting in a jail cell up there doing another inventory, going, man, this was a bad decision to move to Reno, Nevada. You know, and so I decided, you know, the only people that could probably straighten me out would be the United States Army, and the Vietnam War is going on. And Bill's story, he wrote, I had arrived. And I really relate to that, because I rode my Harley from Reno to Fresno to the recruiter's office, and by this time I had another indictment for me in Reno. I knew they were closing in, and where the recruiter's office was in Fresno then, you had to go up about, I don't know, 15, 20 steps and into the recruiter's office. And I rode my Harley up the steps and into the recruiter's office and told them I was the one they were looking for. And I took their test, and I passed everything, and they go, when do you want to go in? I go, well, today would be fine, you know, because I knew the law was getting real close again. And they told me I had to come back tomorrow. And I came back, and they said, we can't let you in. I go, why? And they go, we have your civilian record here, and it says you like to kill people. And I told them, I told you, I'm the one you're looking for, you know. And to some people I knew, I did get to go in the service. And you know, because I'm going to go in the service now, I'm going to become a 10-star general. I know you're going to don't have 10-star generals, and you're right, I was going to become the first one. And, you know, I'm going to make a military career out of this. They're going to get me straightened up. They're going to get me off the booze and the drugs. And I'm going to do real good. I'm going to get straightened out. I'm going to go to Vietnam. I'm going to legally kill people. And I'm going to become this 10-star general. Then once I become a 10-star general, about 4 or 5 months in the service, I'm going to sell dope, and I'm going to steal army tanks and bazookas. I'm going to sell become a millionaire. I'm going to run the government for the rest of my life, one day at a time. And so this is a major commitment for a guy like me, so I bought all kinds of stuff to go back east to basic training, and they shipped me on the bus to Fort Ord. And so I had to take all this stuff because you can't throw it away. And I know they forgot to tell them that I was coming, because I know if they would have let them know I was coming, that drill sergeant wouldn't have been screaming at me. And I don't know how you are, but I don't like to be screamed at. And I don't know how you are, but I always have a good plan A. And I thought, well, that dirty SOB screaming at me, when I hit that bottom step of that bus getting off, I'm going to hit him with everything I got and hopefully one punch him out like a light. Plan A worked real good. I hit that dude and he went out like a light. But there was two goons behind him about 6'8", just bounced me like a rubber ball. And the first 10 minutes I was in the Army, I was locked up in the stockade one more time. Doing another inventory. This is a bad decision to join the Army, man. And I'd get out of stockade and I'd be right back in. I'd get out of stockade and I'd go AWOL. And one time AWOL, I did some things I shouldn't have done and ended up in the federal penitentiary. And I stayed there for a while and they didn't want me, and I was property of the United States Army and there's a war going on. And so back to stockade I go, and the Army didn't particularly want me, and so they gave me a discharge that said, to the best interest of the United States Armed Forces, they let me go. I can remember leaving there thinking, you know what? There ain't nobody in this world can make me mine. Parents, teachers, grandparents, cops, penitentiaries, the United States Army, nobody can make me mine. I told myself, self, the world sure treated you wrong. You ought to just spend the rest of your few years left on this earth making everybody in society pay because they're part of society. I did things like riding my Harley down the street, and if I seen you sitting on a bus stop, I'd jump up and I'd smash the crap out of you. And I wouldn't stop beating you till you were out cold in a pool of blood. And then I'd go ahead and kick you one more time. And that made me feel like you hurt as bad as I feel inside, and you're part of society, so you deserve it. You know, the next years just kept going on, and the courts are sending me to Alcoholics Anonymous now because they think I need it, and you know, I'm going to the net wards for the violent crimes I'm committing, and being strapped with leather restraints to beds, and getting the Thorazine. We were talking about, I spoke in Santa Barbara Friday night, and someone asked, what's the funniest story you had being in a nut ward? Well, they're not really funny stories when you're in a nut ward, but I told them what it was like, because a long time ago you used to smoke in those places, and when you're all Thorazined out, you're not allowed to have matches or lighters or anything like that. And what they had was these, it was like a glowing cigarette burner deal that you could light your cigarettes on. It was indentured in the wall. And when you're that Thorazined out, you can't hold your arm up to hang on the cigarette long enough to get in the wall. So you just get your hand up and get the cigarette in your mouth, and then you kind of lean for the hole. You usually only smash 5 or 6 of them before you get one in there. And it's not real funny when you're trying to get that cigarette lit. But I didn't have that opportunity very much. Most of the time I was strapped to beds because, see, you got to play the tough dude role even going to nut ward. You got to instill fear on the people so they don't find out that you're scared inside. But this just kept going on, and when I was married to my 7th wife, you didn't miss nothing. It was just a lot of the same, a lot of jails and nut wars and divorces, and just a lot of madness going on in my life on a daily basis. The suicide attempts were there, and I don't know what kind of alcoholic you are, but I screw up suicide attempts. You know, it's like I sell a major shipment of dope, and I forget the guy's coming over, and I slit my wrist that night real bad, and I'm laying in there bleeding to death, and the guy comes to pick up a shipment, and he calls 911 and takes the dope and leaves me there, and the ambulance comes and they save your life. When I married when my 7th wife came, you know, it's like, you know, I don't want to live. This is just a marriage. We're going to have a beautiful baby, and this is just to get me through till I die in the next 9 months or so. And she splits and won't come back one time when I kick her out. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to let another wife do this to me. And I grabbed a shotgun and I stopped at 7, and I was drunk and really loaded. And I stopped and bought 2 bottles of champagne at 7-Eleven to celebrate blowing her head off. And I went over to her apartment. She wasn't home. Her neighbors were out there, and they knew I'd been in the penitentiary and the nut wards. And, you know, it just didn't matter. I kicked her window in, and I'm sitting in there thinking about blowing her head off and hoping my kid's not there when she gets there, and guzzling the champagne and taking all kinds of crap with it. And, you know, no matter what I was doing, I couldn't shut my head off all the madness. You know, up to this point, it got to where I could just temporarily shut it off, a few minutes at a time. And this time I couldn't shut it off no matter what. And I thought, you know what, the world deserved what I did to him. But then it came in my head, you know, a couple of weeks before that, my oldest kid told me he was ashamed of me and he wished I was dead. And he was embarrassed that his friends would see me on TV and the newspaper all the time for the crimes I committed. And he wished I was off the face of the earth. I thought, you know what, my kids would be better off without me on this earth. So I stuck that shotgun in my head and I pulled the trigger. And months and months and months later, when I came out of that coma, I didn't have no face. So much of my face was missing, you could walk up and stick your fist inside my head. And they flew in life support systems from all over the world. I heard this beeping crap going on everywhere, and I didn't have a plate in my mouth. And if I snap this plate out, I still can't talk. It's hard to blow them birthday candles out. And I was 100% blind. I'm still most of the way blind. Everything's just a big blur. But, you know, the doctors came by and told me on a daily basis, boy, there's nothing we can do for you. You're going to die. I was strapped with leather restraints, a very mobile part of my body. And that's where I got introduced to AA again. They'd come in and they'd ask me if they could read me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, like I really had a choice. I couldn't say no, I couldn't see them to kill them, I couldn't shake my head no, I couldn't nothing. And they would sit down and read that book to me for hours. They'd take shifts, like 2-hour shifts, to read me that book. And they did it day after day, week after week, month after month. And so now, you know, the outside world didn't understand what I'd done. I didn't have no face. It was, I'll tell you what, it looked like it was a solid gauze pad from my ear to ear and my upper lip to my forehead, because all the rest of it was missing. And they had 2 tubes sewn to the inside of my head that was clear, and they came out. I had to wear shirts with 2 pockets, and they had suction balls in each pocket. So if you were sitting across the table from me in a meeting, you had to watch this clear liquid being sucked out of my head the whole time. And I went to 3 to 5 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous every day. You see, and I'm better than you, though. You got the problem, not me. Over that, you know, I'd been going to AA for over 8 years at this time, and doing it my way, and figuring out why you needed to be here and not me, and I was better than you. But inside, I felt less than you. But you know, I had to feel better than you, because that justified why I could drink and you can't. And over the next almost 2 years, I drank 4 or 5 times. You see, what I did different this time was I got a sponsor, because they were always on my butt. Man, get a sponsor, you might stay sober. So I asked someone to be my sponsor. And they'd come up to me and they go, Matt, you got a sponsor? I go, yeah, I got a sponsor. And they pat me on the back and they say, Matt, you're doing a good job. Keep coming back. If they'd taken that a little further, like, Matt, you got a sponsor? I'd say, yeah. And they say, well, do you ever call him? I'd been screwed. See, and I'm different than you now, and I might need this as much as you, but see, this will work for you, but not for me, because I'm still looking for the differences to separate me from you, because I'm still full of nothing but fear and self-will and self-pity, and I'm a victim. And you know, because they would say if you work the steps over here hanging on the wall, you might stay sober, and see that might work for you, but not for me because I'm blind, I can't see them. They'd say if you read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you might have a chance of staying sober. See, you can read it, I can't, so I'm different than you. You see, for that almost next 2 years, I didn't look for no solution here. I didn't reach my hand out and ask for help. A lot of people did things for me, but the deal didn't work because I didn't reach out and ask for help. I was still playing the victim role. You know, I would cuss you out in an AA meeting if I found out you lived within a block of me and you hadn't come to ask the great me if you could give me a ride to a meeting. You see, I had to... I was just so full of fear and so afraid and so scared, and I wouldn't open up to you for fear because of my life, how it had gone. And that fear, I let that fear rule me going to 3 to 5 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous every day. You know, they'd give me their phone numbers. I'd tell you how stupid you were to give a blind guy your phone number. I'd saved up 455 synthetic morphine tablets from my surgeries because I knew there was a day I couldn't even stand going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I guzzled them down with 2.5 gallons of vodka and came out of that coma 3 days later, and I was really pissed. You know, the deal is if God isn't through with you, I don't care how you choose to try to kill yourself, you're not going to die if he ain't through with you. You know, you can end up, you know, if you're like me and God ain't through with you, you can end up missing a lot of body parts. And by this time, when I came through out of that coma, man, I didn't want to be missing no more body parts. I mean, my whole body's bolted and plated and pinned and screwed and nuts. And I mean, it's, you know, I got a lot of physical pain. I mean, on a daily basis. I mean, some days to just get out of bed takes just tons of effort because I hurt so bad. But as far as having work done on you, you know, I mean, it's really easy for me. For you guys, you got to go through this whole process, and something goes bad on me, they just make a little slit and get a gun, screw new shit back in, you know. Send me down the road again, you know. You guys got to go through all that whole process. It is kind of a pain and when it's cold like this, because all my joints and all those plates and pins and stuff hurt like heck. And you know, the girl that chaired the meeting, she said on her worst days, it was never as bad as it was out there drinking. And that's true for all the physical pain I feel on a daily basis. It isn't nowhere even close to the emotional pain I was in before I got sober. Not nowhere near comparison. On a day, I can't stand to touch my own feet. I can't stand to walk to the toilet. You know, I can't hardly stand being inside my own head because I hurt so bad. It's never been close to the emotional pain I felt before I got here. But so, you know, when I came to out of that coma, man, all that crap I'd heard for 11 years was like a Star Trek movie in my head. And Warp Speed, give sponsor, work steps, get on your knees, you know, it's like, okay, I give up, man. And you can call this a God deal or a coincidence or whatever you want, but I got on my knees and I looked up and I thought, you don't even know how to pray. And then it came in my head, do the best you can, dummy. And I looked up and I said, if there's a something up there, you better do something now because I can't. And at that time, my home group, they just said the Lord's Prayer. And so the meeting was over, so they passed the basket around. They collected enough money exactly to buy me the big book on tape. Now, I call it a God deal. You can call it whatever you want. But I believe, I mean, this is my version. I believe God let them know, hey, go ahead and collect the money and spend it on the tapes. He won't hawk them now. Because if it was just a coincidence, why didn't that coincidence happen a year before? You know, I believe once I surrendered to God and to and became willing to go to any lengths, and became willing to find a change here. Then things started happening. I started going to meetings, doing things that usually take you years and years and years in college to learn how to talk that way. I started going to meetings and saying like, help. I can't do this without your help. Please help me. I started reaching my hand out, and when I started reaching my hand out and asking for help, instead of sitting back expecting you to do it for me, the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous started working in my life. Things started changing. And if you don't want to be happy and joyous and have some emotional balance, don't ask what these initials are around here either, because when you do, all of a sudden you're it. Because I asked what H and I was, and a couple days later, I was taking a panel in the juvenile hall, and a week after that, I was the coordinator of that facility, and I made the mistake one time of asking what a GSR was, and they told me it was a 2-year commitment. I can't do that. My sponsor said, what, you afraid you'd have to stay sober for 2 years? I said, well, here's a good one. I'm going to penitentiaries now and carrying the message in there. And I can't be at the business meeting because I'm going to be at the penitentiary. And so I can't be at the business meeting. They'll probably have to vote me out because I can't be there. And I get home from the penitentiary, and here's a briefcase on my front doorstep saying, thanks for being a new GSR. And I don't know how you are, but at the end of that 2-year term, I didn't feel that I knew enough about that position and enough about the traditions. I signed up for another 2-year commitment. And they said they have this meeting down at the club, and I asked them to take me to it, and they took me to it, and they started talking about some positions needed filled, and I ain't no dummy. I know it's time to go to the bathroom. And as I was getting ready to go out the door, they said, if anybody wants to take the position for setting the chairs up, please stand up. And there I was standing up, getting ready to go to the bathroom and get out of there. And they made me the chair setter up person. And that really pissed me off, because we have keen alcoholic minds, right? So I'm figuring that they want me, the blind guy, to set these chairs up so they can all kick back and giggle and laugh. Look at the blind guy set them up crooked. So I would go there an hour before the meeting, man, and I would feel the linoleum tiles and stuff and set those chairs up perfect. And 7 years later, when they told me I had to let that commitment go to someone else, I was pissed, man. Those were my chairs, and that's been about 3 or 4 years ago that I had to give that position up. And what really makes me feel good is nobody's ever held that position over a year since then, and it's always taken 2 people to do it. One blind guy did. And I still show up at that meeting early, because if those guys don't set those chairs up perfect, I make them set them up all over again. It's good to laugh and see, it's like I got screwed on this deal. I would just I figured, I've been an intergroup chairperson, I've been a chairperson of my home group, I've been everything but the treasurer. They still don't allow me to be the treasurer. Never. But I've held just about every other position, working at central office and intergroup chair, and I was intergroup chair for 5.5 years, and I really loved that. And I didn't want to let that position go. But I did. I thought, because I asked my sponsor earlier in sobriety, don't screw up and ask people with time, because they'll screw you, I asked him, I go, hey man, what position you think I ought to take? He goes, as screwed up and dumb as you are, you need to do them all. And I did them all to find out where I fit. And I'm grateful I did them all, because I learned a lot about, here we go again, the traditions. I learned how to apply that at the group level. I learned how to apply it in my personal life. I learned those are my promises in Alcoholics Anonymous. Those are like my rights. And I learned all that because I got involved in service in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I did all this service work, so see, if you're new, welcome to the 5 newcomers, and like she said, the ones that didn't cop to it, I was one of those. I even knew how long it took to read the traditions, and you guys do it different here, though. You screw a newcomer up, because where I come from, they read the 5th chapter and the traditions all at one time, and you get it down how many minutes that takes, so then you can come out of the bathroom. They've already asked for the newcomers in. See, but you guys do the readings, the traditions later here. But I figured, I'll do everything Alcoholics Anonymous has to offer, and then when I die in a couple years, they can make this shrine out there that says, "Here lies Matt Green, a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, did every kind of service and died unhappy." And I figured they could line newcomers up for miles to walk by and see this, Sobriety sucks, And I got screwed along the way. I ended up enjoying life because I worked the steps. I got the sponsor. I got involved in service to learn how to get out of me. Because I'm all I think about, man, is poor me, I like thinking about me so much I married the Al-Anon, so there's 2 of us that think about me, No, my wife is an Al-Anon, and I love her very much, and I think we have a really good marriage because we're both involved in service. And she's involved in Al-Anon and service as much as I am in AA. There's been a lot of things happening in sobriety, and I'm grateful for the service because of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, 3 of our parents have died in the last couple of years. My dad, he wanted to die at home with dignity, and I learned here in the service in Alcoholics Anonymous, you show up and do it whether you like it or not. Whether you want to stay home and watch the Super Bowl or not, you go do the commitment, man. Because I had all the reasons, just like probably you do. Call your sponsor up, man, you know what? She just left me, and I got a commitment at Juvenile Hall tonight, and I don't have no message to carry. And, don't do that shit, because you'll hear, "Go, dummy." And then you'll hear the click of the telephone. It's like, but, You see, my brothers and sisters, they couldn't do the things that it took for my dad to be able to die at home. And me and my wife were the ones that had to do the things for my dad. And my brothers and sisters call us saints now for taking care of Dad. And you know what? I didn't like doing the things, and Peggy didn't like doing the things she had to do. But we learned because of the service in Alcoholics Anonymous to do the things whether we like it or not. And we got to be there when my dad died, and we got to give him the dignity of dying at home like he wanted. And how much service is enough? That's something you got to ask yourself. Have I done enough today? Because the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says there will come a day when no human power will keep you away from the first drink. How about like a couple years ago when the doctors performed the wrong surgery on my little boy and he almost died? I know I did enough service because I stayed sober through the deal. But then over the next couple months, he went in and out of the hospital, and they kept performing the wrong surgeries, and they had to take part of his intestines out. And you live at the hospital with your sponsees and other people in Alcoholics Anonymous, because you see, I can't do this alone. And you go home every once in a while to take a shower, and they call you and tell you better get back down here. We don't think your little boy's going to make it through the night. Have you done enough? Have you surrounded yourself enough on a daily basis with Alcoholics Anonymous that you won't have to drink or something like that? And this isn't something that, you know what, I know I did enough because I got through that sober so I can rest on my laurels now. I have to continue doing this on a daily basis. I wanted to kill that doctor, and the guys I sponsored held me down, made me pray with them. I hated them for that. When I started praying, I figured I'd just pray to get them off of me, and then as soon as they let me up, I'd go kill the doctor. Through that prayer, praying for that doctor, somewhere along I lost it. I wasn't happy. I resent that doctor real bad, but I didn't want to kill him anymore. You know, there's been a lot of things happen in sobriety, and a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. And the deal is I surround myself with people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know what? You probably think, God, I wish I could find somebody that knows how to take care of everything. We don't know how to take care of shit around here. But when I don't know how to do it, I come to you and I cry and tell you I'm hurting, and we hug and we pray, and you don't know how to do it either, but together we both laugh and cry and pray, and we get through the deal. You see, it's not that we know all this stuff. You know, if you come ask me, how did I do it, you know, because you got a kid in the hospital, I can share my experience with you about my kid. You know, that's all we do here. We ain't got no magical deals. We ain't got no magical wands we wave because we got 12 years of sobriety or 15 years of sobriety. We just share with you what's going on. But the deal is we cry together, we laugh together, we do things together. Left to our own devices, we can't do the deal. You know, it's time to quit now. And, you know, I like to say that, you know, I'm really grateful Peter asked me to come down here. I love him a lot, and I've known him for a lot of years. And thanks for having me, Peter. I love you guys. God bless.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.